Let's take a look at him.
Everybody knows Lady Dimitrescu is tall, but I was still shocked to see just how large she loomed over me from a first-person angle in VR. Resident Evil Village VR captured my undivided attention even beyond my fascination for the tall vampire lady, offering a fresh perspective on a nearly 2-year-old game I have played a dozen times over.
Man blood.
From the robust tutorial before you start playing to the many ways you can customize the controls for the most comfortable experience, Resident Evil Village's VR mode is no afterthought, but rather a well-crafted and exciting way to experience an already excellent game.
You ungrateful, selfish wretch! You come into my house! You lay your filthy man hands on my daughters! And now you even try to steal my property!
Nothing has been watered down in Village's transition to VR. You'll endure Ethan's rescue mission from start to finish, but this mode doesn't quite give you access to everything Resident Evil Village offers either. The Time Challenge Mercenaries mode is not supported in VR, and the weapon upgrades or other modifiers you may have unlocked in the base game will have to be earned all over again. This obviously isn't a big deal for anyone playing Resident Evil Village for the first time, but as someone who already unlocked and upgraded everything over the course of several playthroughs, it was a little disheartening. However, Village VR does offer some cool new weapon attachments, such as the bayonet for the M1897. Unlike the third-person mode available in the Winters expansion last year, Resident Evil Village mostly flourishes in VR. Exploring this remote European village, I've never felt more immersed in the action. From using my hands to move shelves and barricade doors, to reloading my firearms physically, to drowning Ethan's hand in first aid med, Resident Evil Village VR captures a level of realism that is simply unachievable in traditional 2D first-person games. Village VR looks beautiful too. You can easily get lost roaming its maps and taking a closer look at all the little details in the environment. Castle Dimitrescu in particular often had me doubling back to examine all the paintings and photographs on the wall. That said, because the action is all up in your face, it is easy to spot the low-res textures on some things while exploring, most notably the rotten food that is littered throughout the village. Resident Evil Village VR's controls have all of the expected options, allowing you to play either standing or sitting and customize certain things to your preference. You can helpfully swap between options like physically reloading weapons manually or having that be handled automatically. I opted for a hybrid of the two, as it was really fun mimicking the motions of using a real firearm, but in situations where a lot of action was occurring and things got hectic, it was convenient to have my guns automatically reload. Knife combat has also been greatly improved. What was once limited in movement and stiff with a controller now feels extremely smooth and responsive as you take actual swipes at your enemies. The more interesting thing I discovered when playing with the knife, however, is that you can throw it without worrying about collecting it after, because it immediately respawns in your holster a few seconds later. That makes for a handy way to kill enemies and destroy boxes from afar without using ammo. Accessing Ethan's arsenal is done with your hands, pulling weapons and ammo from different areas of your body. While the idea is immersive, the different ways you have to access your weapons can be a bit cumbersome. Sometimes I went to grab a landmine only to pull out my flashlight instead, while other times I would reach out for my shotgun only to grab a sniper rifle. I wish there was a hybrid option that allowed me to pull up a quick menu with 4 preset weapons of my choice, similar to what Resident Evil 4 VR offered. While I would sometimes forget Village has a block ability during the base, even on harder difficulties, it became my new best friend in VR. With the number of enemies coming at you all at once, plus the high stress of trying to avoid damage while simultaneously reloading your weapon, blocking became a very useful tool I previously hadn't relied on. Another new feature that's exclusive to VR is the ability to dual-wield weapons. This makes it a lot easier to get out of tight situations or to simply bust open some lichened skulls faster. Weapons that were once used with 2 hands, like a shotgun, can also be wielded with 1 hand with the pistol in the other. That's super convenient if you need to get a quick shot off at an enemy close to you, but it comes at a cost of more recoil and decreased aim. There's a lot of fun experimentation to be done with the combinations of weapons alone, which makes for a welcome new level of freedom. While VR heightens much of the experience, some tensions and jump scares I encountered in the original game were not as scary here. Sure, a few moments still left me in fight or flight mode, such as Lady Dimitrescu chasing me in her castle, but most of the jump scares can be entirely missed if you aren't looking in the right direction at the right time. It doesn't put a damper on things, but it can still be a bit disappointing. Thankfully, a lot of the scares from Resident Evil Village come from the combat itself. which there is plenty of. There are a handful of sections where Village throws dozens of enemies at you at once, and the VR changes to combat mean you can easily drop your gun when you meant to reload it, or forget to cock your shotgun after firing a shell. Similar to what I said in my review of Resident Evil 4 VR, this new combat style comes with a severe learning curve, which can sometimes be frustrating, especially in later sections. But trust me when I say it's worth mastering, making the challenge all the more rewarding to overcome once you get the hang of it. Less thrilling are the animations that occur when enemies grab you or knock you down. Not only do they drag out the length of combat encounters, but they also put you in some extremely weird and awkward viewing, especially since you can easily look in another direction while the animations play out. On the flip side, Resident Evil Village's puzzles are much more fun to solve and interact with while hands-on in VR. These sections could feel a bit tedious and repetitive in 2D when you are just following cumbersome button prompts, but Village VR has you physically interacting with objects by doing things like flipping a switch to restore power to a room, or moving a statue to solve a puzzle, which makes them feel like more than just busy work. Resident Evil Village VR is far more than just some gimmicky afterthought, adding enough improvements and tweaks to justify fans of both the series and virtual reality reliving Ethan's not-so-great European vacation one more time. While the controls could be a little bit cumbersome as you take time needed to master them, and the VR perspective can cause a few awkward viewing angles, this is still a very enjoyable return to an already great game. For more VR, check out our review of the PlayStation VR 2 headset as a whole and Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge Enhanced Edition. And for everything else, stick with IGN.